My name is Maria Dalton, and I'm about to celebrate my 27th birthday this year. I've been happily married, or so I thought, for the past 5 years. Together, my husband Kevin and I have a vibrant 4-year-old son named Martin, who just celebrated his birthday with all the joy only a child can bring. When we first got married, I worked full-time at a reputable firm. However, as life unfolded, I transitioned to part-time work to better balance my responsibilities at home and at work. Kevin, now 30, is 3 years older than me and was the one who passionately pursued me during our courtship. Yet once we were married, I noticed subtle but undeniable changes in his demeanor. The man who had once been attentive and loving now seemed to lean into a more domineering and controlling role. Adding complexity to our marriage is Jane, Kevin's younger sister, who is 20 years old. Their significant age gap seems to foster a dynamic where Kevin showers her with indulgence. Before our marriage, I found Jane's frequent visits charming, assuming she was simply close to her brother. However, post-marriage, those visits became more frequent and intrusive, testing the boundaries of our home and my patience. Jane's visits, a test of patience. Jane has developed a habit of dropping by unannounced, at any hour, and expecting to be served. She arrives empty-handed, never bringing even a small token of appreciation. Kevin, rather than addressing this lack of courtesy, expects me to accommodate her whims. She breezes into our home, addresses Kevin with a casual "brother, I'm here again," and proceeds to act as though I don't exist. Despite not preparing for an additional guest, I end up serving her dinner. Kevin, instead of being considerate of my efforts, often reprimands me for not being more prepared. Jane, meanwhile, issues insincere apologies, all while basking in Kevin's preferential treatment. Left to eat leftovers, I quietly prepare my own meal, while Kevin and Jane lounge on the sofa, leaving the dining table in a mess. They don't acknowledge Martin or me, treating us like hired help rather than family. The cake incident. One evening, as I was preparing to bathe Martin, Kevin suddenly interrupted, ordering me to buy a cake for Jane. Though it was late, Jane insisted on having it immediately. Kevin blamed me for any delay, leaving me no choice but to head to the cake shop with Martin in tow. During our trip, I tried to distract Martin from the tension by chatting about cakes. He excitedly requested one loaded with fruit. We made it to the shop just before closing, purchasing the cake Jane wanted along with the fruit-laden cake Martin had chosen. Upon returning home, I served Jane and Kevin first, then brought Martin's cake to the dining table. However, the moment I placed it in front of him, Jane expressed her desire for it. Kevin, without hesitation, took Martin's cake and handed it to Jane, ignoring Martin's protests. When I voiced my dissatisfaction, Kevin threatened me with divorce. Martin, though young, seemed to sense the tension. Trying to lighten the mood, he said, "Mama, I also love cakes with strawberries." His innocence broke my heart. I took Martin to another room, so he could eat his cake in peace. Kevin, meanwhile, apologized to Jane for being stingy, leaving me to hold back my frustration for Martin's sake. The piggy bank betrayal. The next morning, as I was preparing breakfast, I heard Martin crying. His beloved piggy bank, a gift from my father, was broken, and the money he had diligently saved was gone. Martin, who always said goodnight to his piggy bank, was devastated. When I confronted Kevin, he casually admitted that Jane had taken the money because she needed it. Holding Martin as he sobbed, I felt a surge of anger and sadness. Unable to stay silent, I confronted Kevin, expressing my hurt. He responded by retrieving divorce papers he had hidden, shoving them at me before storming out of the house. Seeking refuge, with Martin still distraught, I decided to take a day off from work to spend time with him. We visited the park, played hide and seek, and enjoyed the sandbox and slide. For the first time in what felt like ages, I saw Martin's smile return. After lunch, he napped on my lap, a peaceful reminder of the bond we shared. However, the tranquility was shattered when I heard the front door open. It wasn't Kevin's usual time to return, so I became alert. Hiding in the closet with Martin, I overheard Jane rummaging through the house, expressing frustration over not finding something. She made a call to Kevin, discussing their unsuccessful search, before leaving. Feeling a mix of fear and disgust, I realized I could no longer trust Kevin. Gathering essentials, I took Martin to my parents' house, just 2 stations away. Though I hadn't warned them of our arrival, my parents welcomed us with open arms, sensing the turmoil in my heart. After arriving at my parents' home, I shared every detail of the ordeal I had endured, including my growing fear of staying in the house due to Kevin and Jane's troubling actions. My mother, always perceptive, suggested that Jane might have been searching for my personal belongings, perhaps cash or cards. This comment triggered memories of my own carefully guarded secrets. The secret life I kept hidden. Before marriage, I had been a successful CEO in the handmade goods industry, leading a thriving company. When I decided to prioritize raising Martin after getting married, I entrusted the business to trusted friends. Although I shifted to working part-time to spend more time with my son, I never fully stepped away from the company. Kevin had no idea that I still held the position of CEO. From the early days of our marriage, I kept my financial independence hidden. Kevin, despite his charisma, struggled with money management. He spent most of what he earned, and initially provided me with only $200 per month for food, an amount woefully inadequate for raising Martin. He even encouraged me to quit working entirely, to become a full-time housewife. I refused, knowing it would leave me entirely dependent on him. After much debate, Kevin begrudgingly agreed to my part-time work, unaware that I was supplementing household expenses from my personal savings. I also set up a separate savings account for Martin, ensuring a portion of my salary was deposited there each month. This financial independence allowed me to prepare for any eventuality, though I never imagined how crucial it would become. The intrusion and a plan for protection. Recalling Kevin's casual mention of divorce and his apparent interest in my finances, I suspected he and Jane had been searching for my cash cards. My father, angered by Martin's story about the stolen piggy bank money, vowed to confront Kevin. My mother, however, urged caution, suggesting that Kevin might use any rash decisions to his advantage during a divorce. Together, we decided to gather evidence of their true intentions. Acting on my father's advice, I stored my valuables and cash cards in their home safe. Then, I consulted a lawyer, a trusted family friend, to discuss my next steps. Equipped with their guidance, I returned to my house, determined to uncover Kevin's motives. Uncovering the truth. As soon as Kevin came home that evening, his behavior confirmed my suspicions. Without hesitation, he demanded access to my cash cards. His vague and deceptive explanations only fueled my resolve. When I refused, explaining that my earnings were for Martin's future, Kevin grew angry. In a shocking display of entitlement, he claimed I was living off his money and had no need to save for Martin. His words revealed his true priorities. He valued Jane more than his own son. Unable to contain my emotions any longer, I stopped preparing dinner, placed the signed divorce papers in my bag, and took Martin by the hand. As I headed for the door, Kevin shouted after me, declaring his seriousness about divorce and instructing me never to return. I turned back only once to respond. I won't return to a house where strangers come and go freely. Finding refuge and strength. Back at my parents' house, I shared the recording of Kevin's demands along with the divorce papers. Exhausted and emotionally drained, I confessed to my parents that I no longer felt any love or affection for Kevin. My only concern was Martin's well-being. My parents, understanding the depth of my pain, reassured me that they would support whatever decision I made. As I wrestled with the gravity of divorce, Martin's innocent request for food brought me back to the present. My mother, seeing my distress, lovingly prepared his favorite dish, hamburgers. As Martin took a bite, he beamed with joy, praising his grandmother's cooking. Overwhelmed by his happiness and my mother's kindness, I couldn't hold back my tears. Sensing my emotions, my father comforted Martin, explaining that my tears were from happiness, not sadness. Martin, in a tender gesture, hugged me tightly, and in that moment, I felt the warmth of family, true family. My father, his eyes glistening with emotion, asked Martin if he wanted to live with them as a family. Laughing, Martin agreed, filling the room with hope. Finalizing the divorce. Determined to protect Martin and myself, I moved forward with divorce proceedings. With my lawyer's assistance, we formalized the necessary contracts. During this time, I discovered the extent of Jane's financial troubles. Gambling debts and compulsive shopping had left her in ruin, with Kevin acting as her guarantor. Their plan had been to use my savings to resolve her debts. Kevin's calls and messages escalated, over 200 in a single day. His tone shifted from anger to desperation, as he realized I had no intention of returning. Despite his pleas, I remained resolute. When the divorce was finalized, Kevin signed an agreement to pay $340 in monthly child support for Martin. In one final call, Kevin admitted to his financial manipulation and complex feelings toward Jane. Though his tone lacked aggression, I firmly told him that reconciliation was not an option. His quiet sobs on the other end were the last sounds I heard before he wished me happiness and hung up. A new beginning. With the divorce behind me, I resumed my role as CEO of the handmade goods company, finding solace and purpose in my work. Meanwhile, Kevin and Jane's parents disowned them upon learning of their actions and debts. The house that had once felt like a prison was now a distant memory. Today, I find happiness in the love and support of my parents and the joy of watching Martin thrive. Every day feels like a blessing, a reminder that true family is built on trust, respect, and love. As Martin plays with our family dog, whom he affectionately calls his younger brother, I'm filled with gratitude for the strength it took to reclaim my life. Together, we've created a home filled with laughter, hope, and the promise of a brighter future.